Hey everyone, before today's show starts, I want to tell you about one of my new favorite items in the refrigerated produce department. You must try Green Giant Fresh's new veggie bowls. What I love about the Green Giant Fresh veggie bowls is that they are a complete meal, packed with satisfyingly crunchy toppings and a fork for on-the-go convenience. With exciting flavors like the Korean barbecue and harvest, and classic flavors like burrito, Santa Fe, Buddha, and fried rice, you will never get bored with the Green Giant Fresh veggie bowls. I eat them for lunch almost every day. I love the affordable price and convenience. Find Green Giant Fresh veggie bowls in the refrigerated produce department at a grocer near you. Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Welcome back, everyone. Today on the Produce Moms Podcast, we are welcoming Traci Kantowski. Traci is with the Coconut Coalition of the Americas. She has over 18 years of marketing communications experience in corporate and nonprofit environments. And right now she's leading the CCA's communication efforts, which includes developing, educational materials and promoting the organization on social media, as well as conducting media outreach and speaking engagements. And she actually helped found National Coconut Day in 2019, which we are celebrating annually now on June 26th. She's a fitness enthusiast and a certified health coach, personal trainer, fitness instructor. I love that she has 2 children, 2 dogs, lives with her husband in the Midwest, and she is our guest today on the Produce Moms Podcast because we are going to talk about how the Coconut Coalition of the Americas is working to remove coconut from the list of major food allergens with the FDA. So Traci, this is going to be a really exciting episode. Thank you for being our guest.
Lori, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, I know we touched briefly on your background in the intro today, but, tell us more. And most importantly, how did the Coconut Coalition of the Americas start?
Sure. So I have, as you mentioned, I have a background in communications efforts, et cetera, and I've been always very passionate about working with companies in the nutrition and health and fitness and wellness arena. And so the organization I work with got involved with the Coconut Coalition last year. And the Coconut Coalition of the Americas was founded in 2017. So we're a couple years old. And the primary reason it was founded was there were some actually negative perceptions out there about coconut products and coconut oil due to some false reports put out there. And so the Coconut Coalition was put together by a group of manufacturers, stakeholders across coconut product categories to really combat the negative perceptions and to promote coconut and all of its wonderful benefits and the supply chain and
Sure.
Promoting everything that growers are doing, the farmers are doing, et cetera, because coconut is a really powerful nutrient that people need to have in their diet.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit because well, first of all, I love the flavor of coconut. I believe in the hydrating power of coconut water. And I have cooked with coconut oil, but I'll be honest, I use it more, topically, like as a moisturizer and whatnot. But let's talk about, since we've got you on the phone, you're the expert here. Let's get you on the record and inform all of our listeners. What are some of those nutrient powerhouse properties of coconuts?
Sure. So coconut oil, what a lot of people don't realize is it is what can probably be considered as a healthy fat. And people often don't think of fat as healthy, but with the rise of the keto diet, et cetera, fat is gaining its place back in the human diet. And that's a good thing for people. Fat has really good properties for satiety, for brain health, etc. And coconut oil, what people don't really realize is that it contains 0 trans fats and it's lower calories than any other fat. So cooking with it is actually really beneficial for people. On top of the terrific flavor, I'm a huge coconut advocate and I mix it into everything. It also doesn't have that trans fat and the lower calorie properties. It also has the MCFAs, which are I don't want to get too technical for you, but it allows coconut oil to be faster, to digest more quickly, better solubility. It helps with mineral absorption, so nutrients like calcium and magnesium, which are critical to bone health and bone development. It helps with the absorption of those. So it's definitely good to use both topically and to ingest.
Right. I'll tell you, my favorite way to use coconut oil is when I'm popping popcorn on the stovetop. Oh my gosh, it makes it so good. Yeah.
That's my favorite way to use it as well. I don't know if you ever roast your own chickpeas, but I love to use coconut oil on chickpeas and I roast those. It's just really good. It adds a ton of flavor. And in smoothies, you can actually, some people don't realize this, but it's actually great to drop a teaspoon or a tablespoon of coconut oil into your smoothie.
Okay. Well, thank you for those tips. So let's talk about the issue at hand. You know, the way that I actually found Traci, everyone, was I read a trade news release or a trade publication. There was some press about what the Coconut Coalition of the Americas was doing as it relates to getting coconut removed from the major allergen list, so that the major food allergens are declared by the FDA, and they were put into place by what is known as the FALCPA, Food Allergen Labeling Consumer Protection Act. So, Traci, please inform our listeners, like what are the major food allergens and when did the FDA make this a thing?
Sure. So FDA looked at major food allergens, which include milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soybeans, and recognized that they actually account for 90% of food allergies. So in August 2004, they enacted the Food Allergen Labeling Consumer Protection Act, or FALCPA, and to try to combat that, because there, as we all know, there's no cure for food allergies, right? And they can cause severe issues for people. So that all is really, really good. However, some foods were potentially misclassified as part of that act. And in 2006, FDA issued a guidance document to try to help alleviate some of the confusion. Unfortunately, in the case of coconut, it's still confusion surrounding it because coconut was included under the tree nut category on this list of the 8 major fruit.
And coconuts are a fruit, correct?
Coconuts are a fruit. And in fact, if you want to get more specific, coconuts are drupes. And so drupes are a fleshy fruit. They have a thin skin, central stone containing the seed. And so when you think about drupes, because people, when we say, hey, coconuts are drupes, people say, well, what's a drupe? So if you think about drupes, some other drupes are plums, cherries, almonds, olives. But yeah, it's essentially a botanical nut, not even, and so that's where it gets tricky, right? A botanical nut is really a fruit or a drupe. And so, I'm sorry, coconuts are not a botanical nut. They're a fruit. Right. But FDA misclassified it as a tree nut. So if somebody had named coconut originally cocoa fruit, we wouldn't be in the situation. But because it has nut in its lay name, it's included in that category.
Right. Okay, so this is where like my head spins and why I reached out to you about being our guest on the show, because I often will say like the only thing that hurts produce and the consumption of produce, in my opinion, really the primary thing that hurts our industry is this like state of consumer confusion. And then you hear a story like this and you're like, well, of course they're confused. You know, like we can't even get the labeling to identify the food items correctly. So is this a unique thing? Like, are there other food items that are dealing with this, or is this unique to coconuts?
So there may be other foods that are dealing with this, but I can only really speak to coconut. And to your point, it is really frustrating. Like even the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, right? Like very respected organization of physicians who are dealing with allergies on a daily basis says very clearly, coconut is not a botanical nut. It is classified as a fruit, even though the FDA recognizes coconut as a tree nut. And while there have been, what's crazy too, is that there have been some minor, allergic reactions to coconut, the same as to any food, really.
Sure. I mean, there's people who have minor allergens to strawberries or watermelon or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Or bananas. My son had a banana allergy when he was a baby, and it would cause terrible diaper rash. Things happen, but most people who have tree nut allergies can safely eat coconut. And so they're avoiding foods that have coconut in them simply because manufacturers are required to label if the only, and it's not even a tree nut, but let's say if you have coconut in your product, but you have no nuts in it, you still have to label it saying may contain tree nuts.
Right. And this also affects your manufacturers that are carrying coconut products. They might be a tree nut free facility, but if they have coconut in their facility, are they required to disclose that it may contain, currently as the law is written, that it may contain tree nuts?
They are. And they have to label it, tree nuts. And so it could prevent manufacturers from using coconut in their product for that reason. And they may be using, as I mentioned, coconut is the lowest calorie, coconut oil is the lowest calorie oil out there. And it doesn't have any trans fats, but they might use things like palm oil or other oils that maybe are not as beneficial as coconut, simply to avoid the tree nut allergy classification.
Well, yeah, I mean, 100%. Yes, of course. So I want to emphasize one more time. What are the major food allergens? Do you mind listing those again for our listeners?
Sure. Milk, eggs, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soybeans. And those account for 90% of food allergies.
Sure. So it is, I also want to, go on the record for our listeners. Food allergies are a very serious thing. We have to have these types of disclosures and guidelines for the safety of all consumers, as well as the responsibilities of everyone in the supply chain. It goes without saying that Traci, myself, anyone who's involved in the fresh process, it doesn't matter. Anyone involved in the food and beverage industry, consumer safety is our top priority. And, food allergens and proper labeling are of critical importance. That being said, an item that does not classify botanically as a tree nut should not be falsely listed or grouped into the tree nut category. And that's the situation that the produce industry is dealing with right now as it relates to coconut.
Yeah, Lori, I mean, you hit it on the head. It's everybody. Consumer safety is number one, and we want that across the board, but we also want transparency, and we want people to understand what they're buying. And it could be really confusing for people too, that they're avoiding products that they don't need to avoid, which people with food allergies are already limited in what they can purchase. And so it's a shame that they don't have this full transparency, and they may not even be able to get all the nutrients they need in their diet because they're avoiding foods that they don't need to.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the effects of the current state of coconut and the way that the FDA has labeled it with the FALCBA Act. I would like to talk about how this, I think we've talked about the nutritional benefits, and you've obviously shared great sentiment on how it affects your end consumer that could very well enjoy coconuts and enjoy them safely, and they're being deprived of that nutritional benefit from the coconut. Let's talk a little bit more about where are the coconuts grown, and how does this have a trickle down effect throughout the whole supply chain as well as these growing regions. And then, let's start with that. Let's talk about how this affects the supply chain and specifically the growing regions.
Sure. So coconuts are primarily grown on island and coastal areas. So one of the biggest producers is the Philippines. They're also grown in Thailand, India, Fiji, Samoa, Indonesia. And these are primarily small farms that are growing coconut. And so their entire livelihood can be based on the growing of coconut. And so when manufacturers aren't using coconut or aren't buying it because of being restricted from FDA guidelines, it can impact these small farmers. But also is increasing, can increase production costs for manufacturers or make things more difficult, because if they are a tree nut free facility, except for coconut, they still have to deal with the tree nut allergen and cleaning their equipment when they use coconut differently than if it's standard manufacturing, et cetera. And that really isn't needed because it's not a tree nut.
Yeah, very much so. And let's talk a little bit too about, I know from someone who's seeking out, what we would classify as like natural products, right? The products that are made with minimally processed and, processed foods with the least amount of ingredients. It goes without saying that there's a rise in coconut as it relates to, these manufactured food items. I also believe that there's a rise in coconut, like the raw fruit itself too. But I'd like to get some, that's me speaking anecdotally. I'd like to get some data from you on, the rise in coconut products in the United States, or consumer trends that you can share.
Sure. So I don't have the most recent data, the SPINS data, which tracks products in store, et cetera. But what we can tell you is every year I go to industry trade shows, Natural Products Expo West and Natural Products Expo East. And at those shows, you'll see basically every product you could ever imagine being at a natural food store in every single category. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is definitely a rise in the number of companies that have coconut at the show. And you're seeing it in bars. A lot of nutrition bars are including coconut because of that fat. It's a healthy fat that can be included. And so, and because of the keto diet, you'll also see it in skincare, for beauty, hair care, even for pets. We're finding it more and more in pet treats and foods as well, because animals love it. So you'll find treats that are, in fact, some companies actually just sell coconut oil that's specific for dogs, and people will mix it with peanut butter. Like if you're making your own, you can mix it with peanut butter and give it to your dog, or or pumpkin. This time of year. And so we're seeing it across all categories that coconut is being used, but there also, some people are hesitating a little bit because of this allergen issue. And so we are trying to combat that.
So we have to, besides the much needed transparency and fact-based messaging about food, that's a critical issue for the food and beverage industry at large, and also agriculture. Like we have to always strive for that. So as the Coconut Coalition of the Americas, as you guys are, I'm assuming there's lobbying involved here. There's a consumer campaign. What are the other things? Describe to our listeners what you are doing so that we can get this much needed update to the Food Allergen Labeling Consumer Protection Act.
Sure. So we are doing education about the fact that coconut is not a nut, educating on the fact that it's a drupe. And we also are in the process of putting together a citizen petition. And a citizen petition is a great way to get in front of FDA because they are required legally to respond to a citizen petition. And so what we're doing is we're working with a law firm that does a lot of work in this industry to help put together this petition to explain why coconut is not a nut, that it was misclassified. It should not have ever been included in the list of tree nuts, and the areas that it's having a negative impact on industry and on consumers. We're also engaging in advocacy work with some of the allergen organizations. So, I mentioned the American College of Immunology. We're talking to them. We're also talking to the Food and Anaphylaxis Network. We are talking to the Food Allergy Research and Education Organization. So we're talking to the allergen groups because they don't really want to see coconut misclassified either. It's not of benefit, and it can cause even more confusion for people with these major allergens. So we're conducting a lot of education. And the biggest initiative is this petition, because once that's filed, then FDA has to react to it and they have to address it. And so that can help change this guidance document. And sometimes you may think, it's a guidance document isn't a law, but companies are required to adhere to it. But guidance documents can be updated. And so we're very hopeful and feel that this initiative will work in terms of reclassifying coconut.
So that's wonderful. Now, where can our listeners go to learn more about your efforts, Traci, and how can they, I'm assuming you need signatures and participants in the citizens document, but how else can folks support what you're doing?
So we have a website for our organization. It's coconutcoalition.org. And on there, we have resources about coconut, the benefits of coconut, how to use coconut. And we also have a page dedicated to the allergen project, what we're calling the allergen project. And so your listeners can learn more about what we're doing. We are fundraising to help support this petition. We're a nonprofit organization. And so we are definitely putting money behind it, and our members are putting money behind it, but we need help of everyone to help fund this initiative. And so even, $5 makes a difference in terms of helping get this initiative to go. To get started, we need about $25,000, and we're over a quarter of the way there in terms of raising the funds to get this going, and have started the research efforts, et cetera. But people, if your listeners want to contribute, we'd love that. If they just want to even include their name or show support, there is a contact page on there, and they can email us or message us and say, hey, we support this initiative, please include my name. And we'd love that. All support is appreciated, both financial and just support.
Yeah, like the grassroots word of mouth is super powerful when you're doing something like this, trying to get the FDA's attention with changing the law. So fantastic work. Thank you, Traci, for what you're doing. I obviously really believe in it and support it. Wouldn't have reached out to you to be a guest on today's show if I didn't. So I really believe in what you're doing. I wish you the best. I will definitely personally be making a donation as well as lending additional resources from the Produce Moms so we can help spread the word on this. I believe in what you're doing. So that being said, I'm so thankful that you came on the show today and shared all this information. It was really informative for me, and hopefully all of our listeners have clarity now on coconuts. Hey, they're a drupe, you guys, not a nut. They're not a tree nut. So, but that being said, Traci, thank you so much. We have a tradition. You get the last word, not me. So thank you so much. Throwing the mic back to you for the final remarks and goodbyes.
Lori, thank you so much for having us on and helping elevate awareness of this issue, and for your personal support. We really, really appreciate it. And, for your listeners, I would just say, please, use coconut, support coconut, let people know that coconut is a drupe. It's not a nut. And we'd love to hear your stories of how you use coconut. So feel free to outreach to us anytime.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.